Let's have a discussion on this. Joining me via Zoom is Edmund Damakwe Foley. He's a former law lecturer at GIMPA and, of course, the Director of Programs at the Institute for Human Rights and Development in Africa. That's the IHRDA. Thank you so much for your time, Mr. Foley. It's good to see you once again. But I want to find out what your general take is on Ghana's fake news law.
Thank you. Good evening, MFR. Good evening to all your listeners as well. I have had occasion to write a couple of articles on the Electronic Transactions Communications Act in the past. And so it's a piece of legislation I'm quite familiar with. I am not surprised that we've come to this stage in Ghana where we have passed this amendment, I think, or have brought this provision to the fore on fake news, given that we are in very uncertain times. And so generally, I think it is something that has been there. I think in the wisdom of government, they would want to educate the citizenry on the existence of this law and how serious it is in these times. I do have some concerns over the punishment, though, given the way in which I think we should approach the criminal law and how we actually pass it in these times. And I'm sure those are the views we'll be talking about in a couple of seconds.
The issue about 36,000 Ghana cedis fine or custodial sentence for spreading fake news is the punishment. Some have asked whether it is deterrent enough or rather too harsh. Shouldn't you be looking at other alternatives in terms of punishment? I
think in contemporary times, the approach to criminalizing conduct has changed very much from I would say the very traditional retributive or the punishment objective of developing crimes. Today, if you look at the nature of our societies, you have to consider a lot of factors. Earlier in the course of the day, I was sharing with a few friends that in drafting a criminal statute, you have to take into account, the nature of the society you are dealing with. Now, if we look at the law as it is, even before we get to the punishment, how a person comes to determine that something is fake news. Ghana is one of the countries with the highest internet penetration. But let us look at the demographic of the population and who has access to this material. To be honest with you, MFA, I do not think that many of our people can really discern what is fake and what is not. You see a post from a supposed scientist from Japan, or China saying that this is the position on coronavirus. How many Ghanaians have the sophistication to unpack that before they send, or even have that moment to consult, and who? And so I think that to immediately start speaking about this provision without enough public education on information outlets, you may have the situation where a lot of people who otherwise would not have been caught by this provision would be caught by it, and they would not be able to meet that fine and would invariably end up in jail.
Well, but I would finally take your opinion on this also, imposition of custodial sentence. I was alluding to it earlier, but we know that we don't have community sentencing also. We've been told this week, for instance, that Cabinet is still reviewing that. But what do you feel about custodial sentencing in this particular issue, especially fake news, I should say?
I would expect that we really, as a first step, consider other options to custodial sentencing. I think Ghana, even before COVID-19 or any other global concern at the moment, has had issues with prison populations. In fact, there has always been a community sentencing has always been part of the alternative sentencing guidelines developed by the Judiciary and the Attorney General's Department, which we really haven't seen being actioned. And so I think as a first step with such a provision, we would have at least tried to see other ways of engaging people in those alternative sentencing regimes rather than to have gone for such a heavy punishment. I am by no means underrating the seriousness of sending out fake news. But I think that it should really be looked at in context, in the Ghanaian context.
Well, Mr. Foley, we are grateful, and we miss you in Ghana. Please come back soon. That's
I will. Thank you,
Mr. Edmond Namakwe Foley is a former law lecturer at GIMPA and currently the director of programs at the Institute for Human Rights and Development in Africa. And beware, you still cannot spread fake news in the times that we are in. Now, the global pandemic, COVID-19, has been wreaking havoc. We'll get to that shortly and talk about COVID-19 and technology. We'll take a quick break. We're right back.